Hello, everybody. What a beautiful day out. It is the first day of December. Uh, the old timers used to always say that you could tell what the weather was going to be like for the first 3 months of winter by what it was like the first 3 days of December. And their theory, or their story was that each day of weather, the first 3 days of November, would give you kind of a prophecy of what the weather was going to be like for December, January, and February. So today is sunny, warmer than normal, a little bit of a breeze blowing. So if it holds true, December is going to be what they used to call a soft month, not too cold and not too stormy. And now the next 2 days is forecast to be a lot of rain snow mix. And if that holds true, that's pretty much in keeping with the fact that the weather forecasters say we're going to have an El Nino winter, which means a lot of wet snow and ice. One of those winters that you don't like, but hey, it's Canada, it's wintertime. We don't have rattlesnakes and alligators. Big plus. So, back here today, we're getting a little bit of firewood hauled out. The boys just took a load out to the house, and I'm going to get ready here and junk a little bit, but going to have a little cup of tea before I proceed. Now, got a little gadget here that I carry in my pack. This is a Coghlan folding stove. This folds up flat. It's got a little wind door on it here. Little place in here to set a can of alcohol fuel. I carry this with me quite a bit. Got the simple little can of fuel. I think a pack of 3 of these is like $10 at Walmart, Canadian Tire. The stove itself was $10. Just going to light the wick on this. There we go. Yeah, I feel the heat coming off that. Got another story for you today. As soon as I get some water boiling, we're going to see how long it takes to boil a cup of water off this. Usually doesn't take too long. Lots of heat coming there right now. Okay, so here we are, all set up on the wheeler box. Yeah, that's hot enough to burn my hand. These little stoves usually takes about 6 minutes to bring a cup of water up to boiling, so that's enough time to tell you a story. Moose hunting was a big thing in New Brunswick. It still is to a certain extent. Our moose population is recovering. For years we've been on a ticket system where you have to apply for a moose draw, and if you're one of the lucky people that get a license, then you get a chance to hunt. Our season was limited to 3 days in September for many years. Now it's 5 days. Getting a lot of moose around. But back years ago, back in the 20s and 30s, the caribou herd here in New Brunswick was just in the process of dying out. New Brunswick used to have caribou and moose and no white-tailed deer. Now we've got white-tailed deer and moose and no caribou. What happened was when the white-tailed deer started coming in from the south, they brought a parasite, a brainworm type thing that affected the caribou badly. And the caribou, they would get some kind of a disease where they went around in circles and wasted away and died. But back in the 20s and 30s, when this story took place, moose were still fairly common. The last of the caribou herds were wandering around. In fact, the last caribou seen on our farm was, I think it was 1934, a Sunday morning. It came down over the rock ledge just below our farm and out through the fields. None of our family ever seen a caribou after that. My grandfather, his name was Theodore, and he had an uncle by the name of Ed, same name as me. And Ed was he was well known as a very stubborn man, but extremely strong. I've talked to some of the old timers that knew him, and some of the old timers that their fathers worked around him, and he was known for his size and he was known for his strength. Very, very powerful man. And Ed never married. He was too stubborn for any woman to have him, I guess. But anyway, Ed and grandfather were working back in here to the northeast back in the, it would have been into the 1920s, late 1920s. And they were working there with a team of horses, cutting logs and pulpwood. And there was a couple of guys come down through the woods. And they had been hunting moose. And they come up to where Ed and grandfather was working. And they said, we wounded a big bull moose and we followed him down through to right back here. But we're tired. We're not going to bother following him anymore. So they were going to follow the old portage road and go out to the settlements. So Ed said to grandfather, he said, you take the team of horses and hook the wagon up, you go home. He said, I'm going to take the old rifle and go down through the woods and see if I can come up on that moose. And so he did. Now the rifle that he had, I owned the rifle up until this summer passed. I sold it to a collector. It was a model 1886 Winchester lever action, chambered in 4570. And the rifle was made in 1903. And it was around home there as long as I can remember. It belonged to my father and my grandfather before that, but it was my great-grandfather that had bought the rifle, and then he sold it to Ed. The rifle had it had one unique problem. With the reason that I sold it, I didn't want my boys taking a 120-year-old rifle to the woods and maybe it blowing up on them, but the rifle had a unique problem that might have shown up the day of the moose story, because what it was, it held, somebody that's a rifle expert can probably correct me on this, it held either 3 or 4 bullets in the magazine and 1 in the chamber. If you put over 2 bullets in the magazine, when you levered the gun, it would jam. And now that day, I'm assuming that Ed had more than 2 bullets in the magazine, because he went down through the woods and he come into an area that's not too terribly different than behind me here. It was a stand of white birch and a few spruce mixed around through it, kind of an open piece of ground. And the bull moose was laying down. And when Ed come out into the open, the moose jumped up. Now, anybody who's ever seen a bull moose knows that they're not really something to mess with in the rut season. They're 1,000 pounds of nastiness and muscle, and so anyway, this bull, not only that, not only the attitude, but he was wounded to boot. But when the moose jumped up, Ed threw the 45-70 up and he fired. He didn't know whether he hit the moose or whether it was a clean miss or what. Anyway, the moose charged him. And when it did, look at that, the water's steaming already. What have we been, a couple of minutes? I'm going to let her heat up there a little bit more. The moose charged him, and with the gun jammed, Ed was out of luck for getting the moose down. The moose struck him and knocked him down. Now, if you've ever seen video of a moose when they're dealing with like wolves or bears or anything like that, gets around a calf, a moose doesn't use its horns in the way that a deer will. A moose tends to use its front feet, and it'll rear up and it'll slam them feet down and try and puncture and trample whatever it's fighting with. Well, the moose hit him and knocked him down, and then it reared up and it came down and it struck him in the side first. And Ed knew he was gonna be pulverized, because there was no way of getting clear of the moose. And the only thing he could think to do, when the moose went down and the one front foot hit him in the ribs on the left side, the only thing he could think to do, he reached up and he locked his arms around the moose's legs just above the knee. Well, when he did that, he was so strong, every time the moose went up in the air, it took him up in the air, and then it would slam him back down on the ground. And then it would take him up in the air, and it would slam him down on the ground. And of course, with him hanging on the moose's legs, it couldn't get his horns around enough to do any damage to him that way. But the moose beat and pounded him around through the woods there they tore up quite a swath of ground. And at one point, the moose stepped on his left leg, shattered the leg badly below the knee, and it beat him around through the woods there a bit more until he got close to a spruce tree. And the moose, it brought him down onto the ground, and when it did, before it could rear up again, he let go of the moose, and he rolled underneath the spruce tree. And the moose, it kind of made a run around to try and get at him again, but he got a hold of some of the lower limbs, and he went up the tree. And the moose, it pounded and beat on the tree there, trying to loose him out of it, but he got up the tree, dragged the broken leg up the tree enough that he got up in there, and then he took his belt and he wrapped his belt around his arm and around the tree and fastened the belt so that he had a purchase to hold him in the tree if he passed out from the pain. The moose kept him up the tree all night. Grandfather took the team home, and by the time that he got home, it was coming on dark, and so when Ed never come home that night, of course, it's pitch black dark. The most you had back in them days was a lantern. There was not much chance to go looking for him. So at first light the next morning, Grandfather and his father, Ed's brother, and a couple more of them, they went looking for him, and they went back and down through the woods, and eventually they heard him. They were calling out to him, and they heard him down through the woods, and so they got down there. The moose was still laying under the tree. Yeah, it's just lucky that they had brought another rifle, and they shot the moose through the head and killed it. They got him down out of the tree, and the nearest hospital back in them days was in Stanley, and to get to Stanley, you went by train most of the time, but they got Ed to the hospital in Stanley. That's about 30 miles southwest of here, and the doctor, he came in and he looked at the leg, and he said, "Mr. Long," he said, "the leg is shattered so badly that," he said, "there's no hopes." He said, "I can't put it back together." He said, "I've got to amputate the leg." Ed looked at the doctor and he said, "Well," he said, "I want you to know this." He said, "If you take my leg," he said, "when I get off this table, I'm going to take your life." So the doctor, against his best wishes, he set the bone the best that he could, put a cast in right to the hip, and sent Ed home after a few days. And he went with the cast on for most of the winter before they took the cast back off. When they took the cast off, the leg had no strength to it. It hadn't set properly. And so anyway, the doctor, he recommended amputation again. Ed said, "No, sir." He said, "You're not taking my leg." He said, "I've got to work." And so he went home, and he took a piece of stovepipe, and he wrapped the leg with rags, and he put the stovepipe around his leg from the ankle up to the knee, wrapped the top of the stovepipe and the bottom with rags so it wouldn't cut into his leg, and wired the stovepipe in place. He worked on the farm here until he was 93 years old with that stovepipe wrapped around his leg. Every so many weeks or a month or so, it would get to smelling so bad. Grandfather would make him take it off and wash the leg. Ed, being a stubborn old bachelor, he didn't care about anything, but he went with that stovepipe on his leg the rest of his life. I sold the 4570 last summer. I got quite a price. There was a collector was looking for it, and he had chased me there 3 or 4 different times wanting to buy it. And at last he come and he offered a pretty penny for the rifle. So if it wasn't for that, I'd have the rifle to show you today. But anyway, that's the story. Ed and the moose. A man's so stubborn he just wouldn't give up, and moose or no moose, he was going to survive the situation. That's the way our ancestors were, tough as nails. The life that they lived and the things that they went through and what they endured with only crude medical. Sometimes you just have to shake your head. Well, my water is boiling good here. I'm going to swing the camera down here a bit so you can see that. Not really boiling, but just a good steam. and working in the woods, traveling in the woods, hunting and whatnot, I carry this oxo bouillon quite a bit. I was going to have a cup of tea, but I'm going to have a cup of soup instead. Carry that bouillon, and just a quick pick-me-up when you're in the woods. So, what's your hunting story? I'm guessing nobody has a story about being tackled by a moose. I got chased by a spike-horn moose one time, just about a mile south of here. I was hunting partridge. Came around a little bend in a road. There was quite a growth of fir on the shoulder of the road, and walked around the fir, and here's a little spike-horn moose laying just off the side of the road, laying down, resting. He jumped up. He gave a little run down through the woods. Then he stopped, looking back, and I thought, oh, no, don't you dare. All I had with me was a 410. He starts tossing his head. A spike-horn can be awful nasty in rut season, and this was in bird season, right, the early part of October, so the moose was in rut. He starts shaking his head. All of a sudden, he drives a foot down in the dirt, and he starts scratching the dirt back. I said, no, I'm out of here. I went back the road, and there was another little branch road went down in toward a hollow. I beat her down in that, off and down in the hollow. He never found me. I was glad he didn't. Moose is the one thing that I'm a little bit cautious of in the woods. I don't know if it's just because growing up hearing about Ed with the moose or not, but I'm a little cautious about moose in the woods. Just out here on this road, there's a 90-degree turn out here on the roadway. I was cutting logs back here about, probably 15, 16 years ago at least. And I started out here with a tractor one day. I had cut a maple just in off the side of the road. When I was going out the road, there was a little calf moose in the maple top, and it was browsing around in the limbs that I'd cut. I couldn't see the cow anywhere, and so I thought, well, she's got to be there close. Just now the calf, it kind of sidled into the bushes, out of sight. I'm sitting there on the tractor, and then the calf walks out on the road in front of me, and kind of looked at the tractor and didn't pay too much attention. It starts walking out the roadway. Then the cow, she walks up on the road. Her hackle was standing right up, just like a mohawk. She had her ears pinned right back, and she just stood crossways of the road. She didn't even look sideways at the tractor. She just stood crossways of the road. I thought, yes, sir, you old girl. You ain't going to let me past you. So I sat there on the tractor for a bit. And she started walking out the road, and she walked out a little ways, and right out where the 90-degree turn is in the road, there was a big water hole on the road, puddle. Wheel tracks is deep there where we'd been hauling logs, and it was laying full of water. So the calf, it went out and drank a little bit out of the puddle, and then it went on out around the turn. So the cow, she walked out part way to the where the water hole was. So I started the tractor ahead. When I did, boy, she swung right around, right broadside of the road. Her ears pinned right back. She wasn't letting me near that calf, so I stopped the tractor again. She stood there for a while, and then she walked out to where the puddle was. She put her head down like she was going to drink out of the puddle, but she wasn't. She was just had the head down enough to see what I was going to do. So she stood there for a while, and then she come back around and just standing broadside in the road. I thought, yeah, I try and go with that tractor, she's going to come after me. So I sat there for a little bit on the tractor, and then I thought, well, it's supper time. I want to get home. I got cows to milk, and I got things to do. So I rolled the bucket on the tractor down, and then I banged the bucket right back fast with the hydraulics. Oh, when the bucket made the big bang, she ran out, but instead of going around the 90 following the calf, she just ran straight ahead into the woods. So I put the tractor in high three and out the road I went. When I come to the turn, well, she's straight ahead of me in the woods, just, 20, 30 yards into the woods. I come to the turn and I swung the turn like that. Well, when I did, you just go around the turn a little piece and there's another loop road goes off to the right. The stupid calf is standing right in the intersection of the two roads. When I went around the turn with the tractor, now I'm going toward the calf and the cow's behind me. The calf, it just run in the mouth of that loop road and kind of run off to the side a little bit. That cow chased me all the rest of the way across this lot and down across the next lot onto the neighboring property below there. I mean, I'm going high three, high four in the tractor, going right along fast. And she is right at the winch on the back of the tractor. That old nose stuck right out like that. Her ears pinned right back. She she thought for sure I had the calf. The calf was still back here on this lot. But yeah, she chased me. It would have been almost a quarter mile down through the woods before she finally turned around and went back looking for the calf. Well, that's my moose stories for today. So I got to get some more wood junk before the boys come back in. You have a good one. Take care.